Good morning, and welcome to the Multimodal Planning Session as part of PennDOT's first ever Virtual Innovation Week. Thank you for joining us today on day 5 of our Innovation Week. My name is Danielle Klinger-Grumbine with PennDOT's Bureau of Innovations, and I will be your host for today's session. Before we get started, if you are on the line from PennDOT, please make sure that you are off of VPN. So that if that means you need to leave and come back in once you disconnect for VPN, please do so now. So I'd like to kick things off today with a welcome message from PennDOT Deputy Secretary for Multimodal Transportation, Jenny Granger.
Good morning and welcome to the final day of PennDOT's Virtual Innovation Week. I'm Jenny Granger, PennDOT's Deputy Secretary for Multimodal Transportation. We appreciate you taking your time from your busy schedules to join us here today, and we hope that the information we provide will help in your transportation missions. Today, members of the multimodal team will share 1. Innovations we are deploying using unmanned aerial systems or drones. 2. Our ongoing efforts to track data as we assist the state's transit systems. And 3. Our planning for a future that ensures effective and safe transportation options for the people of Pennsylvania. Drones are very much in the news today and not always for the best reasons. They have become invaluable tools for aerial surveys and mapping, and our multimodal staff is working hard to ensure these devices are deployed safely. Tony McCluskey will speak in greater detail. Danielle Spila from Public Transit will be outlining how we are using improved data technology to enhance efficiencies at both fixed route and shared ride transit providers. Instead of relying on paper scheduling and trip reports, shared ride operators are entering and tracking data on tablets. Having this real-time data helps both the operators and we, PennDOT, the overseers, track rides, the number of passengers, and the locations that they are going. This helps us properly assess billing and payments. We are also working on ways to facilitate checking riders' eligibility for subsidized services. Similar improvements are also in line for our fixed route operators. Bicycle pedestrian coordinator Roy Gothy will talk about the first ever Pennsylvania Active Transportation Plan. This undertaking sends the message that PennDOT and the Commonwealth see and understand that the transportation pendulum has shifted. Part of this shift has been spurred by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. People want options and may not be so willing to rely on the automobile to get them where they go every day. Just look at the news reports. We see bike shops are having trouble keeping up with inventory and demand to address the skyrocketing requests. This renewed search for options is what this innovative active transportation plan addresses. Ensuring safety and a better quality of life for the people of Pennsylvania is embedded in what we are trying to accomplish. I hope you find today's sessions interesting and thought-provoking and help us all to further the transportation goals we share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Secretary Granger. Following each presentation today, there will be a facilitated question and answer period. If you have any questions for our speakers during today's session, I invite you to please use the chat pod on the right-hand side of your screen to submit your questions, and we will be taking questions in the order in which they were received. Throughout the Virtual Innovation Week, I also encourage you to view the more than 50 innovative tools, materials, applications, and technologies that are on display in our virtual exhibit hall. That virtual exhibit hall is located on our event website, www.penndot.gov/innovationsweek. These innovations are being used by federal, state, and local agencies and could help you do your job safer, better, faster, and even save you money. There is also a contact form on the virtual exhibit hall page that will allow you to submit any questions you have about a particular innovation. And once you submit those questions, we will connect you with the appropriate subject matter expert to get your questions answered. And finally, before I introduce our first speaker for this morning's session, Please be advised that this session is being recorded. All of our sessions from the Virtual Innovation Week will be available on our event website within the next week or so. Also, for this particular session, if you click on the link that was in the calendar, your invitation that you received for today's session, you will be able to hear a playback of the session at the conclusion today. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce our first speaker for today. Our first speaker is Anthony McCluskey, who is the director of PennDOT's Bureau of Aviation, and I'd like to welcome Tony to the session today.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and good morning, everybody. And to our PennDOT colleagues, to our federal agencies, Federal Highway Administrations, definitely in the audience, our consultants, our contractors. I hope each one of you have gained something from the various presentations throughout Innovation Week. A big thank you to the Bureau of Innovations for leading this fantastic first virtual conference, and definitely thank you, Deputy Secretary Granger, for laying down what's going to happen later this morning with Multimodal Transportation Deputate. And so there have been a couple of presentations earlier in the week on how PennDOT is deploying UAS technology. Let's dive further into what the Bureau of Aviation is doing with the technology from a safety and instruction standpoint. This morning, I will highlight certain aspects of FAA's Part 107 regulation and PennDOT's interim UAS policy. Next, I will share with everyone how PennDOT is proceeding with UAS operator training and highlight the current status of our drone program. I will finish the presentation sharing with you a glimpse of PennDOT's vision, moving this technology forward. CFR Part 107 is so-called the umbrella and covers a broad spectrum of commercial and government use for drones weighing less than 55 pounds. Part 107 requires the remote pilot to be certified through a knowledge test. Costs are around $160. Part 107 lays out the limitations for operating a drone. The regulation also provides an expectation that you are flying the drone in a safe manner during your mission and you are competent to fly your mission. So let's take a further look at FAA's operational limitations. Note, FAA is getting more and more comfortable how these drones are operated and the safety record we have so far. They are evaluating relaxing some of these regulations. One FAA operational limitation, unless it is waived or authorized by the FAA, is that you cannot operate over people or moving vehicles. We really should not be operating over our contractors and our projects or other modes of transportation. The expectation is if you're flying your project and you happen to travel over a building or home and not stopping, coordination is typically not needed with that tenant or homeowner. However, if you are stopping over any building or homeowner, you should be coordinating with those individuals well in advance of the day of your mission. You must fly within the line of sight at all times. On a clear day, this is roughly 1,000 feet from where you are. Your missions are carried out only in the daytime. Maximum height flying a drone is 400 feet above ground level. Now, if the structure is 200 feet above the ground, this means you can fly another 400 feet above the structure as long as you are not impeding on any FAA airspace restrictions. And of course, FAA is giving you that authority. Let's turn our attention to PennDOT's interim policy. We have the 3 C's as shown on the slide: compliance, coordination, and control. For compliance, we are operating according to FAA Part 107, and depending where your mission is located, there may be other federal agencies that have UAS expectations to comply with, such as the Department of Interior. For state, PennDOT has an interim policy. However, again, depending on where you are flying your drone, there may be other state agency expectations, like the Department of Corrections. During your pre-flight planning, these items must be addressed. Maybe you are flying near a state park. DCNR may have their own expectations. Compliance is the foundation of our policy, our interim policy. Before we fly, the pilot knows federal, state, and local compliance. Research may be needed. Coordination is the second C. If you are flying within 1 mile of an airport, the expectation is that you are coordinating with that airport. You are coordinating with private property owners, other modes of transportation if need be, such as our short lines for rail freight. Control is the third C for PennDOT flights. A mission assistant and visual observer may be needed. Now for third parties, that is, we're talking here a consultant or a contractor, we're leaving that decision making of using a mission assistant or visual observer to the consultant or contractors. This slide shows some of the operational considerations when you are flying a drone. There are so many types of missions you could be flying. Structures, construction, progress, UTM, or which is defined as unmanned traffic management. A standardization of operations and training must be developed to reduce the risk of flying in conjunction with getting uniform results from your mission. Depending on the complexity of your mission, risk management must be assessed. This is indeed covered in our next slide. Are you flying over private property or are you hovering over private property? There is a difference. The latter requiring the coordination piece in advance of your flight. Roadway distraction. During a mission near an interstate or 4-digit state route, your flying may be a distraction for drivers. Be very mindful when you are in these situations. The last bullet there regarding imagery and storage and security. Depending if you're taking pictures, videos, the size of the files you're capturing are large. They are really large. Naming convention of files is key for organizational purposes. Form AV-14 is the UAS flight request form and is completed by the remote pilot in command. The form includes a risk assessment, and this is what we currently have. But please note, the department has just entered into a contract with Kitty Hawk Software for PennDOT. Kitty Hawk will provide the department a software to track PennDOT's UAS program, pilots, equipment, training, equipment maintenance, and flight operations. The AV-14 risk assessment will be blended into this new software program's risk assessment. The completion of the AV-14 or the UAS request form is a requirement for all PennDOT employee flown flights and for those consultants and contractors that were asked by PennDOT to fly the mission. Now, if a consultant or contractor was not asked by PennDOT, and if that consultant or contractor wants to fly their own mission, we highly recommend the third party coordinate with the department well in advance before they fly the project. The bottom line is this: the department wants to have visibility on all drones flown on our projects. I like to think of Form AV-14 as our pre-flight planning form. The risk assessment in the form assures that PennDOT and the remote pilot in command have the proper control and proper coordination with various property owners prior to the day of the mission. If you recall, these are 2 of the 3 C's discussed a few minutes ago. In PennDOT's interim policy, our certification of the pilot is making sure that the pilot understands our policy. All pilots, whether PennDOT or a consultant or contractor, must be certified before a mission is flown for PennDOT. They all must understand our policy and our expectations. For proficiency, we make sure that PennDOT pilots are proficient with the aircraft for the type of mission they will fly. If the mission is complex, or if the winds are higher than usual due to the site being in a valley, the pilot needs to be competent to accomplish the mission. It is easy to take a drone to 50 feet and hold it there. It is a different situation if you are maneuvering the drone around obstacles, wires, or around a bridge pier. For consultants and contractor pilots, we cannot control contractor proficiency and will defer the risk and responsibility to those respective organizations. Hence, you're probably thinking, what is the training program looking like? There should be a training program, a standardized training program, especially for those more difficult missions. For PennDOT pilots, we want them to be proficient. We want to establish proficiency milestones. Reviewing the federal guidelines, there are no federal minimum proficiency standards. NIST, as shown on the slide in front of you, where the National Institute of Standards and Technology has developed a program that can be used as a good template. Engineering District 11 is in the process of building something similar. We are looking very closely at this standardization model and incorporating this procedure into our program. This slide shows the pilot is flying the drone in 3 different axes and performing various functions at each cluster of buckets. A training program like this will test the pilot manually controlling the drone around various objects. This could really simulate the real thing in a field. This slide generally shows you what it looks like using the NIST standard training, which I covered in the previous slide. As you can see, the drone is in the middle of the picture there, and you have your various buckets. As you can see, the pilot in command, the remote pilot command, would maneuver that drone around those various buckets, and depending on what task is being asked for them for each of these cluster of buckets, the results would be captured and downloaded. Note, this was not taken in the backyard of Engineering District 11's office. There may be some repetition from previous presentations earlier in this week. Specifically, Jason Zhang and Kevin Lira from District 11. They did cover this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. They did a really good job on their presentation earlier in the week. Highway Administration is conducting an executive study on UAS. The Bureau of Aviation is a partner with Highway Admin for sure, moving forward forever. Several task force groups have been established that are shown on the slide. The study is evaluating the various nuances associated with the UAS technology. Groups are looking at which drone fits the best for various applications. Training platforms are being researched. And of course, they are benchmarking with other states. So important to benchmark. Depending on the results of the study, which is to be completed in the next several months, there may be changes to PennDOT policies or additions to current PennDOT publications. The big question is this: how should we modify our policies to meet our expectations and training associated with this technology in order to roll out the drone program to all engineering districts? This slide shows the status of PennDOT's current drone program. The department has 11 aircraft with the 3 shown. The Bureau of Aviation has certified 11 PennDOT pilots, 11 of them. And also the Bureau of Aviation has certified over 30 individual consultant pilots and or contractor pilots. As the PennDOT drone program grows, The intent of this slide is to show you the PennDOT organization and the potential future for using this drone technology. We have 11 districts, over 11,000 employees, over 25,000 state-owned bridges, and nearly 40,000 miles of state-owned roads. Depending on what the future lies, PennDOT could have 30 or 40 additional pilots. We could have a lot more drones purchased. Our drone program is moving at a slow pace initially. District 1, District 11, which you've seen firsthand earlier this week, have their own pilots already flying. District 12 is coming into the picture now, with a few other districts not too far behind. Each district does have a UAS point of contact to assist those consultants and contractors with any questions. It may take some time to get the program moving full steam ahead, but we are making strides. Once we really start seeing these efficiencies using this technology, this program could really start ramping up real quick. Now, we just shared with you PennDOT's vision. Let's take a look at the Commonwealth's initiative using drones. Governor Wolf has directed PennDOT to initiate the establishment of a statewide UAS task force. The Bureau of Aviation is working with the Office of Transformational Technology to assist in laying out this task force. The objective is to bring everybody together at the table from the public sector and also the private sector to capitalize on mobility, economic, technology, and of course, those workforce benefits. This initiative is in the early stages. We're hoping to have this task force up and running early next year for sure. We are excited to advance this technology in Pennsylvania. As you leave this Virtual Innovation Week conference later this morning, you may want to retain one key component with you. UAS technology is here to stay, but there are some real exciting things you will be seeing with the use of this technology in the very near future. That concludes my presentation, and look forward to answering any questions that you may have on UAS.
Good morning, Tony. Your first question came in. Why have we chosen Kitty Hawk over Skyward, which seems to be ODOT's choice, and they're far ahead of us with their drone program?
Sure. We, meaning the Bureau of Aviation, we have explored various types of software programs. We've reached out to other states. Being on the SAO's executive board, I'm the vice chair for the National Association of State Aviation Officials. We have worked closely with North Carolina DOT. We've had great discussions with a lot of vendors, but based on our needs, based on the basics of the program, and of course, the partnering that Kitty Hawk has with FAA moving forward for sure, that's where we landed. And so we thought that looking at the overall picture of where we're headed and benchmarking some other states and other local communities in the country, we feel that this was the best fit.
Next question. Are you working with other state agencies with respect to drones?
Yes, very important here. PEMA, which is the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, they've been having and holding for the last couple years state agency UAS discussions, typically once a month or once every 2 months. And so the whole premise of these meetings is really discussing that mutual aid for emergency response. And so besides PEMA, I know Department of Agriculture has been involved, Corrections has been involved, Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, Military Veteran Affairs, and so the discussions are lively. We're working closely with all those other agencies, and as you can see, all these prior discussions will be very, very important for sure as this task force definitely gets moving.
Next question that just came in. Since we have about a dozen pilots and a fleet of drones, is there a system by which a district can ask a neighboring district to come to their district to do drone work for a day?
Oh, sure. And actually, I will volunteer the Bureau of Aviation to help piecemeal that communication from district to district. Each district has UAS point of contacts. We will definitely share that, who that is, and either A, once you get that list, and we will share that with you later today for sure, and work through the proper chain of command. Reach out to that point of contact, or reach out to the Bureau of Aviation. We'll make sure that happens, and that's the beauty of this is based on our organization, and we have a great organization, the best at PennDOT here, and we want everybody to succeed.
Another question just came in. Is your office controlling what drones are being purchased by the department?
Our office, what we do is we have our interim policy and we're certifying pilots. We've established a risk assessment in terms of the nitty-gritty details of what drones should be purchased. We are working with those respective district organizations in PennDOT, and we're listening to them. In terms of what needs they have, what's the use of the drone. There will be discussions between my staff and the district, and so we're not telling them what they should, which drone they should purchase, but we are basically working with them to help them arrive at that best solution. So we're not directing anything for that.
Another question that just came in. Are there any state laws addressing the use of drones?
Yes, there is. Act 78 of 2018 was passed a couple years ago, and this was the first law, and really it's about the unlawful use of drones, whether you're using drones to conduct surveillance or putting someone in fear of injury or delivering contraband. Okay, that was stemming from the unlawful use. The other part of that law, Act 78 of 2018, was prohibiting municipalities from enacting ordinances regulating UAS.
Another question came in. Do you train certify people that are in local government if there's an interest?
Yeah, regarding local governments, and we've had discussions on this topic with PEMA and those monthlies or bi-monthly meetings with other state agencies, and so there has been plenty of discussion on how will we communicate to be effective here with the local governments, and we're still working through the details on that. We're surmising that once we get a standardization process for training, and we're talking here the proficiency, the competence level, we would love to share that in as an option for a local government. I don't believe at this time we can tell a local government you're going to be using this for sure. So, but we like to provide those tools in the toolbox for moving forward.
Where are training centers for PennDOT?
Yeah, the training centers, we're working through those details now. In terms of being certified, for the most part, John Melville, he's our division chief for safety and licensing, and he actually has been visiting pre-COVID those district offices, and if the district had a consultant that wanted to be certified because they're flying on a mission that was asked by PennDOT, those communications, that training was being conducted at the district office. Now, based on the circumstances where we're at, of course, those would be done virtually, and we were to work through those details, but also always including the district. The district needs to be part of that for sure. And so we like to definitely keep that lines of communication open.
The last question that we have, and I know you kind of hinted this on your last slide before we took questions, but when do you expect to convene the first governor's UAS task force?
Yeah, we're slowly working through the details this fall. The Bureau of Aviation has been involved working with the Office of Transformational Technology, and we're laying out who those public and private partners should be. And so we're looking at early next year. When I say that, 2021, we're not talking 2022 here, 2021, okay? And so that's when we're excited. We're excited to get this ball moving, and so great things will come out of this task force for sure.
All right, thank you so much, Tony. I think at this point, that's all the questions that we've received. Of course, if there are more questions for Tony, please use the chat pod, and we should have some time after all of our presentations to circle back to the additional questions that came in. I do know there was a question that came in about whether these slides will be available. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, recordings of all of our sessions from the PennDOT Virtual Innovation Week will be available on our event website within the next week or so. And that event website is www.penndot.gov/innovationsweek. Also, a recording of this particular session is available if you click after the session today. If you click on the participant link that was in the calendar appointment that you received for today's session, you'll actually be able to hear a playback of the entire session. So there'll be multiple ways in which you can access recordings of this session, either immediately following today's session or within the next week or so on the event website. And Tony mentioned earlier, we did have a presentation earlier this week by Jason Zhang and Kevin Lear in terms of how they're using drones. It was a great presentation. So if you missed that, you would be able to go to our event website again in the next week or so and listen to that session's recording. That was the digital delivery in transportation session. So again, actually real quick, I'm gonna go back over to Dan just to see if we did get any more questions in. I think that we did. So Dan?
Yeah, we actually had two more questions pop up in the last 2 minutes. The first question, Tony, are the costs to borrow and use drone and operator on a temp basis high?
Well, that's one of the things what we're looking at from our task force. We're looking at those efficiencies. Okay, so when we look at traditional means of doing something versus, okay, are we gonna have a consultant use this technology on a project, or is PennDOT, are we going to fly it ourselves? And so we're still working through those details, and I'm looking forward to seeing what those results are.
And the last question, do you anticipate the creation of any new positions or work classifications stemming from this drone program?
It's a very good question, and who knows what the future lies. And so with that being said, like I said, as I close my presentation, we're starting to gain some steam, okay, some energy here, moving this program forward. And so it really depends on what the future lies and how opportunities are identified and captured. And so that's my response. I don't know within PennDOT for sure, but again, we are very excited to work with other agencies. We're very excited to work with our private partners for sure.
Thank you so much, Tony. Some great questions coming in this morning already. Again, if you do have additional questions for Tony, he's going to stay with us throughout the session here this morning. And if we should again have some time at the end to circle back to any of those additional questions. So we're going to move on right now to our next presenter. I'd like to introduce Danielle Spila. She is the director of PennDOT's Bureau of Public Transit. So I'd like to welcome Danielle to today's session.
Good morning. Thank you for attending this session to listen to the innovations the Bureau of Public Transit has made in the last decade. The things we've been doing have kept Pennsylvania on the forefront in the public transportation industry. We've not been afraid to try new things as we strive to improve public transportation for all Pennsylvanians. As a bit of background, Pennsylvania invests over $1.5 billion in state dollars every year into public transportation. That puts us 4th or 5th in the nation in terms of a state investment. We have a vast infrastructure in Pennsylvania on public transit. We have 35 agencies that provide fixed route. Fixed route would be the predetermined routes like SEPTA, CAT, Port Authority. They all have routes that they publish, and you wait on the corner and you wait for the bus, and the bus comes and gets you and takes you to a predefined destination. We also have demand response service that's provided in every single one of our counties by 44 systems. Demand response is something where you call ahead and you say, I'd like to be picked up at my house and I want to go to the doctor, and that happens in Pennsylvania in every one of our counties. We believe that our investments in technology have improved service for the riders who take over 400 million trips annually across the state. If you haven't taken public transit in Pennsylvania, you should try it. We offer free fixed route service for individuals over the age of 65, and we subsidize that demand response service for seniors and people with disabilities. For many individuals, it's their lifeline for shopping, doctor's appointments, and work in both urban and rural communities. Whoops, sorry. Getting used to the slides here. Danielle, it's not working. I want to go back. Can I go back, Danielle? Okay, there we go. Sorry. So Pennsylvania was one of the first states in the country to adopt a fully electronic application and granting system. We purchased an off-the-shelf product that we then customized with the help of a contractor. Most other agencies at the time didn't have any applications online. Since then, many agencies inside and outside of Pennsylvania have moved to electronic applications. We are currently working to migrate our DocGrants product to eGrants, which is used across the Commonwealth. This will allow the application and grant process to be fully electronic, because eGrants also includes comptroller and legal reviews. So that's a really good thing for us. It'll help us to speed up the process. So when we moved to our paper application from paper applications to DocGrants, the Bureau spent a lot of time consolidating different program applications. I think there were more than 20 into 3 actual applications. This allowed our transit agencies to cut down on the time they spent filling out applications with the same data. We share the data in DocGrants across programs. Additionally, it's allowed our staff to begin to standardize their reviews. We also pulled some of the administrative functions away from program staff so that they were able to focus on technology reviews and program management, and not the administrative functions like making sure all of the correct forms were used and authorized officials has actually signed off on applications. The data that we collect through DocGrants is data that we use to publish our annual performance review that you can find on our website. And if you have any interest in public transportation, that's your go-to book. It has lists of all of the agencies and some really fascinating data. The next thing I wanted to talk about is our statewide scheduling software. Prior to the implementation of that, each transit agency, we use the statewide scheduling software for our demand response agencies. So prior to its implementation, each transit agency, most of them are small with very few staff, would have to procure their own scheduling software. Many of them did this and then didn't have the staff to implement, or when they ran into problems, the companies would not follow up or fail to provide adequate customer service because they were small. The backing of the state gave us more influence to get issues resolved. The actual software allowed the agencies to transfer their scheduling from Post-it notes and filing cabinets to actual electronic technology. When we purchased this, we did a statewide deployment, and all of the transit systems have the latest technology. Sorry, trying to catch up with my slides here, folks. The EcoLane software, as you can see, I can talk about technology, but I can't use it. So on that slide, you can see kind of what we have. So we've put in a CAD, or it's really automatic vehicle locator software. So all of the agencies have tablets, like the Deputy Secretary talked in the beginning, on their bus, and they click, and it's like a GPS on the bus so that they know where they're going. And back at the office, the transit agencies know exactly where all of their vehicles are at any given time. They know whether their vehicles are on time. They know whether they can put special notes into the driver, like pick this person up at this door. Before that, we'd never had that opportunity. So the trips are able to be scheduled more efficiently, and it allows the transit agencies to save money. They also have been able to add additional services, such as calling customers for an imminent arrival the night before, which allows them to cancel trips. And it also allows agencies to access electronic booking through through our Find My Ride, which I'll talk about a little bit later. For larger, more sophisticated agencies, they often use the data to from EcoLane to better manage their systems. So our capital planning tool is probably something that folks on the highway side of the agency would relate to. It is really, it was legislatively mandated in 2007 that we developed this, and it allows us to have all of our transit asset management information in a single system. It's become a database of all of the transit assets, from office furniture to computers to vehicles and facilities. It allows us to capture that asset inventory and asset condition across all of our transit systems. The capital planning tool provides for us a snapshot in central office of the state of the good repair of all of our transit assets in individual agencies, and then we can look at that on a statewide level. We all wish we had more funding to provide every single thing that people request, but this allows us to make decisions based on the most need and focus our resource allocation at an individual agency level, so that we're not building a new facility when they should be replacing buses. It levels the playing field for all of our agencies. We can see the condition. We can see the condition of the transit agency's assets. Sorry. And it has allowed agencies, some of the agencies use it as their sole asset management tool, and it allowed them to get rid of filing cabinets full of reams of paper, and everything's online. We are able to capture the condition of their asset. They can put photos in there. They keep track of maintenance repairs. So it's actually really a good system for them, especially for our small agencies that may not have the need to purchase a separate asset management system. Because we developed this with the goals, or with the knowing that we were going to be having to do a federal transit asset management requirements, it meets and collects all of the data and helps us to meet those requirements. And it's also available for our transit planning partners or transportation planning partners like the MPOs and RPOs. They have access to it, and they can go in and look to see what's available to, or what the transit system assets are like. The next system that I want to talk about a little bit is our fixed route ITS. So this is a project that we started probably last year, maybe a year and a half ago. And it's we've purchased a statewide fixed route intelligent transportation system, or as we affectionately call it, FRITS. FRITS is focused on providing real-time information to transit agencies and the public. We're implementing CAD, AVL, video surveillance, automated passenger counters, and business intelligence software across the state. To date, we've completed 4 pilot implementations and are starting on the next round of implementations. The FRITS project will be completed in about 4 years, and we did get an approval to do a 10-year project so that we can include maintenance in the next couple of years. So the reason we went to a fixed route ITS system is really so that the transit agencies, both large and small, would have the ability to implement the latest customer service improvements. So the FRITS project has many benefits for both the public and transit agencies. The general public gets alerts on when their bus is arriving or when it might be late. They can view this on the web or even look at the agency's website. The transit agencies can push out alerts to proactively to passengers. So you could sign up to know when a particular route is going to be delayed, and if the transit agency can then send information out on all of those routes. The FRITS project also allows transit agencies to have access to better data that helps them with service analysis, maintenance issues, security issues, insurance claims. If they've got the video surveillance, that helps them a lot. So in Deputy Secretary's remarks in the beginning, she talked about moving to an electronic application system for our human service transportation programs. This is one of our latest technology innovations, and we're actually working with Commonwealth IT resources to help develop that application. And it's going to be accessible for all of our human service transportation programs that include the shared ride program, which is the program that I talked about earlier, the demand response program, and the free fixed route for seniors. So if you're one of those eligible populations, you can fill out this application online. Our state agencies, other state agencies like DHS may be able to include some of their programs as well as we develop this. And this is in line with the customer service transformation initiative that the governor has been talking about. So the online application for the Human Service Transportation Program is sorry, guys. So there's a delay with these slides, and it is, I can't figure out the delay. So the benefits of the electronic application would be that it would reduce the needs for applicants to have to travel to a provider office. So if you're a senior or a person with a disability, it is difficult sometimes for you to get to where you need to go. And so the ability to be able to upload all of your information online is really valuable to you. And then we can go through that determination process faster to get you eligible for our services. And the other thing that it allows is that you don't have to know what program you're applying for. So it will guide the applicant through the process, asking questions about their needs, and then it will qualify you for whatever eligible program you're applying for. And then if you move from one part of the state to the other, you wouldn't have to reapply for, because right now you have to reapply every time you move to a different area that's covered by a transit agency, because they all keep their applications separate. So this would be a way for them to not have to have that information on in an individual agency. You could just go for across the Commonwealth. So our the next thing that we talked about, and I alluded to it a little bit, the reason we can do this is because we have the shared ride scheduling software. Is we have a trip planning, kind of like a Google Transit or a Google for Transit and other transportation that we've developed, and it's deployed in the South Central area. So you can actually go on and look at this. It's called Find My Ride PA, and it's a web-based and mobile-friendly trip planning and scheduling application. And if you go on and you say you want to go from one place to another, it'll tell you how much it'll cost, what services are available, where you would actually go to get the bus. And it will also let you know if you're available for services. Like you can type in your number and it'll tell you how much it'll cost. So the idea is that people would be able to use this to proactively plan their trip. They knew that if they are a senior citizen and they're able to walk a block, they could get a free trip as opposed to having to pay $3 for the on-demand service. The Find My Ride also allows us to book trips directly into EcoLane, which is an important thing because it frees up the time for customer service at the transit agencies. So the trip planning or the Find My Ride software will spread awareness about safe transportation services across the Commonwealth, and it allows the shared ride riders, once they have access, to bypass calling a transit provider to schedule the trip. So you could actually go online and schedule it. And that's where we're going to put the eligibility application. So it'll become a one-stop shop for human service transportation. So as you can imagine, all of these technology projects, there's a lot of challenges that we've overcome and we still deal with on a day-to-day basis. It requires all of our transit agencies, large and small, to adopt technology. That sometimes is the biggest challenge of all, because you have agencies that don't have very many staff, and we have to spend a lot of time helping them through all of that. Our transit agencies aren't at the same level in terms of staffing or even their ability to adopt technology. So we've had to provide additional training, extend our project deadlines, and do a lot of coaching with some of our agencies. And we've also learned through this process in the last decade, implementing all of these technology and projects, which agencies are influencers, and we use them to the best of our ability. We worked really well with the industry and with our statewide association to get these projects implemented. Our staff has to be willing to change our processes, and we've done a lot of that. For instance, I talked about in the DOT grants, we had to reassign job duties. We have to get people to learn new things, and it helps that I have a great staff that's willing to change and adapt and learn and problem solve. We've spent a lot of time in meetings and adopting and customizing products to our needs. And sometimes we do go down a path and we need to divert, and people think it's a waste of time, but it's really kind of a learning experience. I would say one of our biggest challenges, and it still remains a challenge, and it kind of falls into that last one, is that the Commonwealth's procurement policies aren't always conducive to technology purchases. It takes a long time, and we have to be specific in what we're procuring, and that's not always easy. And going to that last bullet, a lot of times that process, the technology has gone through 5 iterations before we've even had a chance to procure it. So it's an ongoing issue, and we try our best to work with legal and office services and the department or the OA to work through all of that. And again, as I'm sure all of you know, data integrity is always an issue. You know, bad data in, bad data out. So, you know, we continue to struggle with that. One of the things that we've started doing is auditing our data that the transit agencies put in. And that's added time and expense, but I think in the end, it helps us to have very valuable data. I think that's my last slide. Yeah. So, oops, going to Roy's slide. Sorry, Roy. Preview. The Bureau of Public Transportation is a small organization. I think we have 17 staff. We deploy, Danielle, take control back. We deploy a lot of innovation and technology in ways that help our agencies and keep our staff learning new things, which I think makes it an exciting place to work. The one thing that I've kind of insisted on in the past couple of months is that we've recently completed a technology strategic plan, because I kind of felt like everything was all over the place. So now hopefully that will guide us in our future efforts. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions. Sorry for all the technology back and forth.
Thanks, Danielle. The first question that came in is, how does this benefit seniors that are not technology savvy?
So our seniors that aren't technology savvy, one of the cool things is a lot of times they have a family member or a friend that can help them. And so we do have that, but we also have transit agencies that are very aware of that, and they definitely reach out to those individuals and they will help them. They can still do phone calls. We actually have transit agencies that will go out and train seniors how to ride the system if they've never done it before. So I think we try and bridge the gap between those that want technology and those that aren't really great at technology or don't have access to technology.
Next question, how has COVID-19 pandemic affected your implementation activities?
So we definitely, in the implementation of FRITS, which is our kind of our active implementation right now, we required contractors to actually go on site to transit agencies because they're installing hardware in buses. That pretty much stopped for a few months. We're trying, you know, now we have the vendor who has implemented the COVID precautions, and they actually are on site now. We have definitely done all virtual meetings and done as much as we can virtually so that we can continue to meet the demands of all of these different projects. The eligibility application, which is also one that's pretty active right now. The good thing is they're all technology projects, so you know, that's an application. So a lot of that work has been done online. So we've been impacted to some extent, but it hasn't been terrible in terms of delays.
Next question that just came in, how do we best extend routes to parts of county now not served to allow more use of public transit?
It's always a tricky question because fixed route requires a little bit of density, and transit agencies have a, you know, they have to be looking at the productivity of those routes because that service costs money, and if you have 1 or 2 riders extending a route, it may or may not be beneficial for them to do that. So I think having conversations with the individuals that are at the transit agency is the best route. They make, at the local level, make all of the service decisions. We don't do that at the statewide level. But I definitely think right now transit ridership is down significantly. So it's probably not the best time to start new routes because they're trying to keep the ones they have out there now. But I think our transit agencies are always looking for new and innovative ways to do things. So yeah, it's always a question we get, and there's not a good answer because public transportation may not be the answer in some of those areas where there's just not enough density to support it.
Another question just came in. It says, I am aware there is a paratransit that takes elderly that are homebound to doctor's appointments. The complaint has been the waiting time when their appointments are complete. Will this application help those timelines?
So it may or may not. It depends how the agency implements it and the sophistication of the agency. Some agencies will have people contact the transit agency when they're done, and if they have enough vehicles, they will try and go back out. This is supposed to be a real-time scheduling software, but again, some of the agencies have a they're more sophisticated than other ones. They have more density. Certainly, we get a lot of complaints about people in rural areas. They're on the bus twice as long as it would take to get them. Well, it's not an ideal system in that it's not a taxi cab system where you get picked up and get taken and then they wait for you and take back, because the efficiency of the system is its ability to be able to pick 2 or 3 people up, and so that you share the cost of that ride. And so the sacrifice is you might be on the bus longer than what you would be in your car.
Next question. How have you overcome the difficulty of contracting for and implementing technology in the public sector environment?
So we work really hard with our partners, with office services and our legal folks. I wish I had a good answer. It is a challenging environment to try and purchase technology. Even our transit agencies, as technology has moved to more of a service model, they used to buy a system and charge it on their capital side. And now it's a software as a service, and so it becomes an operating cost for them. I think we are always struggling with that. We try to make sure that when we are purchasing a technology, that it's really one that we want to use and need, and that we think we're going to have a long-term use for it. A lot of times, if it's something that the transit agencies really want, sometimes their procurement rules are a little bit easier than ours, and so we'll encourage them to do that themselves.
And the last question, how have your technology investments improved service for customers?
So we've talked it all during this entire presentation. I think obviously the use of phones and the transit agencies being able to push out messages allows people to be able to make decisions better. They'll know if the bus is going to be late. Customers are able to call in to service centers, and going online and tracking their buses is a lot better for them because they can make better decisions. Our whole goal has been to improve customer service in everything we do. The scheduling software allows, hopefully makes the rides more efficient, because you don't have an individual kind of looking at a map and trying to do that. It's all done through GPS. And so I think all of our initiatives that we take on are really geared towards improving the service for the transit public.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Again, if you have additional questions for Danielle or for Tony, please feel free to enter them into the chat pod on the right-hand side of your screen. Again, we'll circle back to those additional questions at the end of today's session. So we're gonna move on to our next speaker for today, and this is Roy Gothy, who is PennDOT's statewide bicycle and pedestrian coordinator. And I'd like to welcome Roy to today's session.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to talk to you today about our active transportation plan, and I'm going to highlight, as I move through the slides, some of the pieces of policy and implementation that I feel are particularly noteworthy and, for lack of a better word, innovative. So let's start at the beginning. Active transportation in Pennsylvania is a change. It's a big change from the 2007 statewide bicycle and pedestrian master plan, because what we're doing here is we are thinking about transportation as more than recreation. We're thinking about it as transportation. So it's an essential service for people who walk and bike out of necessity rather than by choice. And active, because I really wanted to think about how we were going to tie some of the bigger goals in transportation planning to walking and biking. So think health, think equity, and think connected networks. That's kind of where we wanted to go, because the original 2007 plan really focused primarily on safety, which is always PennDOT's goal, but it didn't think further ahead. So what is active transportation? In the world that I'm looking at, active transportation has a fairly short, concise definition. It's any self-propelled, human-powered mode of transportation, such as walking or bicycling. And we're familiar with most of these. Bicycles are pretty ubiquitous. People have been walking since the beginning of time, but they're interacting now with automobiles and technology in ways they've never done before. So what we're looking at with the active transportation plan currently is situations in Pennsylvania that may look like this. This is a river trail near Columbia. The 4-year-old you see in the middle of the intersection. That's not the greatest facility. And I know that, by the way, PennDOT District 8 is in fact working on some plans for Columbia and the Wrightsville Bridge that will improve some of this. But it looks like this. It also looks like the next slide from Johnstown. You can see here in the aerial view, the red lines. Those are a series of crossings that pedestrians would make, waiting at each signal to cross a street. While I was there at the site, every single person took the green line, the desire line they call it. They would cross when the light was red. They would stand on the 2 feet wide concrete median, and then they would cross when traffic cleared in the opposite direction. It was shorter, it was more efficient, but it wasn't legal. And so when we think about the network and who we're privileging, if you count it up and you figure they wait at least a minute at each one of those crossings, that's a 4-minute delay to cross a street. And that's not something that you would anticipate making drivers wait. So thinking about how we plan our network for people who walk and bike is important. To tie that back into our active transportation plan, we started out with a statewide survey, which some of you may have participated in. And we wanted to get a sense of the conditions for walking and biking in the state of Pennsylvania. The actual survey itself was innovative. We pushed this survey out through social media with the press office in coordination with our folks in innovation. This was the first time PennDOT had ever actually funded a Facebook promoted survey. So rather than just posting it on our Facebook page and saying, please take it, we actually spent dollars to promote it to more people. We received, I think you can see it up there, 12,780 responses on this first question, but we had over 13,800 people respond to the survey. And that was, at the time, the highest number of people that had responded to a social media based survey product with PennDOT. So I was pretty proud of it. But what I really want to focus on here is kind of the survey results. How challenging is it to walk in your community? We thought that was important. And it turned out that 30% of people who responded said it was challenging or very challenging to walk in their community. And of course, why is also important. And what we saw in our results, what particularly stood out is highlighted in this box in red. And it turned out that they wanted sidewalks and a connected sidewalk network. Similarly, for biking, we thought it was important. How challenging is it to bike in your community? And we looked at the results, and this was substantially more people saying it was challenging or very challenging. In fact, 58% of our respondents said it was challenging or very challenging. And of course, we asked why. So here was, bike lanes and protected bike lanes were pieces of infrastructure they wanted. And if you look over further to the right on that, they also wanted a network. This lines up with what federal and national research shows. 51 to 56% of the population generally is interested but concerned about riding bicycles because they're not comfortable riding with traffic or next to traffic. A smaller percentage is a little more confident or highly confident and would be comfortable using marked bike lanes rather than physically separated bike lanes. And you'll notice that there's a certain percentage here that is not cited, and that's people who are no way, no how is how they're defined. So they're either unable or completely unwilling to ride a bike as a means of transportation. So we took that as a base and we said, okay, what do we have in our community? We have are willing, but they're challenged by the infrastructure. So the vision statement developed from that research and from our stakeholder discussions, we wanted to really emphasize how important walking and biking are to Pennsylvania's transportation system. So they contribute to community health that I mentioned earlier, economic mobility, and overall quality of life. It's a pretty straightforward statement, and I think it captures what our stakeholders were looking for. And then we come up with our core policy statement, which was actually pulled together before we started the active transportation plan. PennDOT shall make accommodations for active transportation a routine and integral element, and covers everything from soup to nuts: planning, project development, design, construction, operations, and maintenance. So it's not the icing on top of a cake. It's part of transportation planning. It's part of everything we do at PennDOT. And we work very hard here to make sure we can accommodate people who walk and bike. So once we had a core policy statement, we thought, what did the survey results show? What are we trying to achieve with our active transportation plan? And we came up with 6 themes, which we'll explore in the following slides. But you'll note safety is still in there, and it's number 1. But we touched on a number of other pieces that perhaps people don't necessarily think about when they talk about walking and biking. And I'll highlight the innovative sections there as we advance. So our goal is to improve safety for non-motorized users. And you can see we have a number of different ideas in here that we'd like to pursue. I think critically here is proactive evaluations and discussions on new and emerging technologies and mobility solutions. Much as Tony has drones in his world, I have e-bikes, e-scooters, balance boards, powered skateboards, and a range of other devices that are coming out regularly. To give you an idea of how important this is, in 2019, there were approximately 136 million trips taken by people on bike share or scooter share in the United States. Approximately 40 million of those trips were station-based bike share systems, so pedal bikes and e-assist bikes. And then there were 96 million trips taken on dockless e-bikes and scooters combined, but the e-scooters were 86 million of those 96 million trips. So it's important to be aware that technology is changing and that these vehicles are, at least in the United States, becoming a factor in how people choose to get around. It's also important to note that currently e-scooters are not legal on the roadway in Pennsylvania, even though you can buy them on the the floor at your local Target or perhaps at Best Buy. Legislation is on the way, and you'll see that I've noted legislation and policies up there as well. So when we think about enhancing safety and we think about transit, for example, those scooters in a recent San Francisco study generated 4 times more transit trips than they replaced. So people were using e-scooters to get to transit to change trips. So when we think about what we're doing with active transportation, it really goes hand in glove with transit. We then moved on to our next theme, which was an equity theme. And we really wanted to address how we're providing our services to communities. How are our dollars being allocated? How are our projects being located? What are we thinking about? And the idea is that we provide opportunities for people of all ages, abilities, races, ethnicities, and incomes all across Pennsylvania to walk or bike. And so starting to think about equity criteria into decision making and how we prioritize our investments. A lot of our MPO partners are mapping using federal highway data, their disadvantaged communities, and starting to think about their transportation plans in those terms. They're developing active transportation plans at the county level, at the township level, at the municipal level, and we're working hand in glove with the Department of Health and DCNR to support that through WalkWorks grants. So they're able to think about what their vision is for their community, come to us through the PennDOT Connects process when we are developing projects and say, here are the needs in our community. Here's why it's important to us. How can we accommodate them working with PennDOT? Or this is how we like to accommodate them through the multimodal or transportation set-aside program grants. I think it's a great way to start a discussion that maybe hasn't been had before, and just noting that it's out there. So we're working with our partners to address some of these challenges with equity. Moving on to the next piece, you'll recall that connected networks were something that people wanted. They wanted more sidewalks that connected to places and biking networks that connected. Segments are not terribly useful. If you have to cross a very challenging roadway, people will opt not to take the trip. So what we wanted to do here was emphasize a connected network. We have 12,000 plus miles of trails in Pennsylvania. We have a state bicycle route network, and we have a lot of communities who want local bike routes. So we're thinking again about those active transportation plans, about talking to them about where they're connecting origin and destination, where do people want to go in their communities, and planning. So how does it all fit together? It takes a lot of work. And so new roadway treatments are one of those pieces I thought I'd mention here. We are working on an update to our design manual, chapter 14 for bicycle design. So when we reach those complicated intersections where there are a lot of turning movement and a lot of through traffic, a lot of lanes, how do we get people safely across the road? We're working on that. We have some new designs in there that I think will be very helpful for the citizens out there. We also have new access to Amtrak for bicycle riders so that people who are commuting or doing tourism can actually get their bicycles on Amtrak and not necessarily have to pack them into the baggage cars. And we have some new options for trail alignments within limited access right-of-way. For a long time, the policy was unclear whether we would allow a trail to use a section of limited access right-of-way to make a connection that they couldn't make any other way. This process is almost complete internally for review. What we would like to do is give communities the opportunity to come to us with an idea, and it would be reviewed internally based on the criteria we've set up. Is it safe distance away from the existing right-of-way? Is it separated from a fence? Are they willing to maintain it? Is there any other viable option besides using the limited access right-of-way? So not carte blanche to come in and use our right-of-way, but an option where options may be limited. So then we thought about leveraging partnerships, and this is something that I think you've heard from Tony and Danielle. Funding is limited, staffing is limited. We wanted to recognize that it takes partnerships hand in glove with both funding and planning and maintenance to make things work for active transportation. And I really want to highlight PennDOT Connects with our district planners as being a key piece in what we've been able to do with trail crossings and bike lanes all across the state. Just being able to talk to our communities and say, what are your needs? How can we help you has been really, really amazing in the past 18 months. And what I've seen in District 1, District 6, District 11, District 8, District 9, it's just all over the place, a vast improvement. And we're going to continue to do that. I want to highlight in particular our partnership with DCNR and the Department of Health with an MOU that was signed to continue to support walkable communities throughout the state. The agencies committed to interagency coordination, working to support the work at the municipal level to develop walkable communities. PennDOT is also part of the Interagency Health Equity Team, where we work with 13 different state agencies to support issues related to equity and health outcomes, including access to food, supplies in areas where there may be issues with that. And then I think we move on to theme number 5. Healthcare providers here. We wanted to pull those into the mix. That was something we haven't done before. And that ties into the public health realm. Active transportation is important all across Pennsylvania because people are not getting their 150 minutes of moderate exercise the CDC recommends. And it's having deleterious effects on people's health outcomes in our communities. Levels of obesity, diabetes, stroke, emphysema, heart disease, dementia, depression, and Alzheimer's are all related to people's ability to get outside and be physically active. Especially in today's environment with the COVID-19 outbreak, we saw how important trails were to people to be physically distanced, to be able to walk and bike safely and get out of doors when many other opportunities were closed to them. What we're hoping to do with this theme is address health disparities. So some communities have more facilities than others. Some have poorer health outcomes. How do we take the social determinants of health and the health department's data at the county level and start to support some of the improvements we need to see? How do we include those goals and aspirations in MPO and local planning activities? It's a big step forward. It's a larger way to think about transportation, and it's more than vehicle throughput. Data collection is critical. One of the challenges is, for example, e-scooters. We don't know how many crashes they are. They're not reported, but they are reported in ER data, emergency room data, and collecting it that way gives us an idea of what some of the challenges are related to e-scooters and e-bikes. So we know that one of the bigger crash issues for them is pavement quality. The scooters about 50% of the scooter crashes occur because there's pavement issues or some sort of issue on the sidewalk. So we know that that's a problem, and we're getting that data through public health agencies, not through our crash data national. And health practitioners and policy development. MPOs don't traditionally reach out to regional healthcare providers and say, what are your problems? What are you seeing in the health world in terms of the crash data or people's ability to reach health appointments in a timely fashion? What can we do to support you? We're looking to get those conversations started as well. And finally, I mentioned health grants and criteria to kind of strengthen the link between active transportation out there. And finally, our theme 6 is economic mobility, which is kind of at 2 levels. The first level is we want to make sure the individual can get to the community resources they need. So they can get to school, they can get to their job, they can get to anything they need that would support it. So and other destinations and tourism, which is a huge industry in Pennsylvania. So that's a community economic development program. If you are doing the things in your community that makes it walkable and bikeable for your citizens, it's going to be more attractive to new businesses, and it's going to be more attractive to people who come to Pennsylvania to do whatever it is, from leaf peeping this time of year to simply riding a PA bicycle route across the state. And you'll note the picture here on the right. That is another potential economic opportunity. Those are electric assist bicycle cargo delivery vehicles that UPS is using in the United States in a few cities to think about how we can remove their truck traffic from center cities and reduce congestion, greenhouse emissions, and improve their delivery times. And so this is really important. The other piece that I wanted to highlight in terms of innovation is the turnkey micromobility solutions. And what that means is companies are providing a franchise support for small businesses to start up scooter share or bike share across the United States. So instead of 3,000 vehicles, you can start with 50. So a city that's 100,000 population has scooter share and bike share. A city of 1,500 has the same opportunity. And then I mentioned the last mile delivery, and then package delivery connected by automated vehicles on the sidewalk is something that just became legal as a pilot program in Pennsylvania, and that'll be an interesting situation to follow. So that's my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions from the audience at this time. Thank you so much, and note that our active transportation plan is available at the link on the bottom of this slide.
Thanks, Roy. First question, and here's a nice little opportunity to get some interaction from the audience. So Roy, I'm going to ask you this question, and then anybody who's in the crowd, if they have an answer or a thought to this, please feel free to enter it into the chat pod, and we can we can share what you have to say with it. So Roy, the first question: what are the biggest obstacles to supporting more walking and biking in well, we'll just say statewide for you, but for the audience, how about for your community?
I think the biggest challenge that I see for communities is the kind of the misapprehension about the challenges with the maintenance of these facilities. Time and again, what we've heard from local governments is that while we'd like to put in a bike lane here, we don't necessarily understand what's involved in the maintenance of a bike lane, or we can't afford to maintain a bike lane because they don't necessarily understand what's involved in it. That's a challenge. Similarly, sidewalks. Maintaining sidewalks is a local issue. PennDOT does not own or maintain sidewalks. We're happy to include them as part of a project if a municipality says they would like them. And in fact, there's funding support to do that. But the problem comes afterwards. A sidewalk that has a segment that is not, say, had snow removal occur on it becomes an impassable barrier to someone with a mobility impairment or a vision impairment. So recognizing that, the local government may not want to go out and require homeowners or property owners to clear their sidewalks, and they may not have the funds themselves to go out and clear the sidewalk. So they opt to defer from that, not necessarily recognizing the benefits. So funding it is a real challenge, and it's something that I struggle with, and I know the department struggles with regularly. How do we educate people on the benefits of these, and how do we get communities to, I guess, dig in the couch cushions for the funding? It's really hard.
Questions are pouring in. A lot of them, as you had just stated, involving funding. But the first question we have: has the TIP adjusted plans that provide for walking/cycling?
So we have a couple of different MPOs doing things in a couple of different ways, as you might imagine. Lancaster, for example, they do have a pot of money set aside for what I would describe as active transportation projects, where they see a particular segment of roadway where there would be a real benefit to a bicycle or a pedestrian facility, and they will slide some money into it specifically for that purpose. MPOs also have some money set aside that they are able to use passed through from PennDOT for projects that are multimodal in nature. So there is some funding available for that, but generally the way I think we're trying to do it now is that the scoping process is changing. So through the PennDOT Connects process, our district planners meet with the local government and the MPO to talk about a project. And we ask about their active transportation plan or their bike ped plan and their land use development plan. What do you have here? Will people be walking and biking? What's your vision? So that scoping process incorporates the active transportation needs into the project. And then it doesn't become something that you're trying to change in the TIP later on after the project has been set.
Okay, we got a person to bite on our biggest obstacles or challenge. The statement is urbanized areas are seeing more traffic limiting space to accommodate installation safely. This would be due to traffic and parking that must be accommodated. So there's a challenge there in local areas. But the next question, how can residents and local municipalities best reach out to PennDOT about their biking and walking concerns?
Short answer is through your PennDOT district planner. They'll be the point of contact because they're aware of what projects are going on now and what are likely to be going on in the future so that they can help coordinate that meeting of needs and opportunity. And we do have a list of district planners available on the PennDOT website.
The next question, and back to funding. This is a great program. However, is there funding streams for cities, townships, and boroughs to fund continued reapplication of the lane markings? Also, is there a place where the placards, street decals for riders are available in order to gain consistency with application?
So I'll start with the first one. The reapplication of line markings. So the only time the department does a reapplication of line markings or the bike lane sharrows or anything like that is if we're in doing a resurfacing or a restriping effort. And when we are in there, we replace in kind what was there, but there are opportunities districts to consider or in doing the resurfacing if we could reallocate space, say widen the shoulder, or perhaps put in a bike lane if it's something that the community wants. So when we think about the bike lanes, for those of you who don't know, the pavement markings and the signing for bike lanes are the local government's responsibility. A bike lane sign is, I think, around $350 with installation and lasts about 15 years. So unless it's hit by a car, it's fairly permanent. The lines probably last, depending on the amount of traffic, motor vehicles going over them, around 5 years. Pennsylvania has salt and winter weather. So we don't have funding for the local governments to do that specifically, the reapplication, but we do our end of the job with the maintenance. See, what was the second part of the question? The placards. I think that they were talking about the application of the materials for the bike lanes. So I don't think so. We don't have funding for that either necessarily.
Thanks for that, Roy. And yeah, that was the question. The next one, is PennDOT supporting turnkey bike share at the municipal level in a financial way?
No, not at this time.
I'm going to take a quick moment. If anybody has any questions for Tony or Danielle also, please feel free to put them in the chat pod. We'll get to them in a little bit if you have any. Roy, the next question, has the department considered allowing the increased flexibility via Pub 9 for utilizing liquid fuels for sidewalk improvements and complete street improvements not currently allowed?
we've had the discussion about what we're allowed to do with that, and I don't think there's an appetite right now for opening what would probably be a can of worms for that. Once you let the camel's nose in the door, I think there would be a lot of requests to use funding for a lot of different things. And so for the time being, no.
We have a comment from somebody with PennDOT in District 1. Lindsay DeVito says, in District 1, we suggest that municipalities contact their MPO or RPO as well to get their needs and wants on the radar. Of course, the district office is there to assist as well. So thank you for that, Lindsay. Roy, your next question is, I like the idea of involving the health sector on the benefits of active transportation. So far, what do you think is the most important? What is most important input that you've gotten from them?
I think the biggest point I've gotten from the Department of Health and the staff that I've been working with is a real sense of what their county priorities are, which counties they've found to have some of the worst public health outcomes, and having that discussion where see how improving people's access to active transportation can address some of their concerns. So how does PennDOT fit into the Department of Health's goals, and how can we support them through our regular activities?
Next question. As a local elected official, I am interested in promoting connected active transportation route in our township. Who can be spoken within to think through the planning process to start this and make it appealing to my fellow supervisors?
That's an interesting question. I think one of the ways to start is to reach out to, this is going to sound odd, the Department of Health and their WalkWorks program. The WalkWorks program issues grants every year to communities who want to develop an active transportation plan or a Vision Zero policy or a complete streets policy. And they have grants, I believe, that go to the range of $10,000 to support the development of that work. And if you're looking at a way to start the discussion, developing that plan is a way to do it, because part of that requirement is that you reach out to the community, the different stakeholders in the community, and really identify a vision for the community. And that's what we'd like to have at the table with the PennDOT Connects meeting is, what is your plan? What is your goal in a larger sense, rather than just one route necessarily. So I would actually start with the Department of Health there, and possibly your MPO who might have some funds available for planning as well.
What about sidewalks on bridges? Does the state maintain them in the winter?
The short answer is the sidewalks are the responsibility of the local government. There are only a handful of sidewalks that I'm aware of across the entire state where the department has assumed maintenance responsibility. So basically, no.
The next one, a major road improvement project is being planned by PennDOT. This road is identified as a significant bike road for connectivity on the county bike transportation map, which was funded by PennDOT. How can bicyclists meet directly with PennDOT district staff to work on improvements for bicycling and walking? The district planner has been advised about concerns.
Yeah, this has been a challenge for us. I'll be honest with the PennDOT Connects process. We have meetings with the MPOs and we have meetings with the local government. And to date, our position has very much been that the avenue for the local government and the public is kind of one channel. The public reaches to their elected officials who reach out to PennDOT. And I've had discussions with our people in programming and development about what we might do to address that, but we haven't resolved the issue yet. It's a good question because sometimes there are additional concerns that may be missed. And Pat, I will definitely go and refresh that discussion with Brian here and get back to you personally, all right?
Any updates on the status or timing of parking protected bike lane legislation?
Absolutely. For those of you who aren't aware what that means, currently in the vehicle code, you're required to park your car within 12 inches of the curb. And an interpretation of that code means that when you park cars further than that with a bicycle lane uses those parked cars as a separation from motor vehicles, you are actually requiring the car owner to violate the law because the bike lane is probably 4 to 6 feet wide, and that's more than 12 inches. There is a bill, and it is currently up for third consideration in the Senate. It doesn't look like it's going to pass. There are some conflicts related to Philadelphia specifically, and it's just at a stalemate at this point. So currently we are not looking like that bill is going to pass in this session. I expect it will be reintroduced in the next session.
And Pat Krebs had has a follow-up, Roy. In 2014, a study was made on how to improve bicycling connectivity between Harrisburg and Hershey. This is for improving biking by local residents and for cycling tourism in the region. How do you advise that this study be taken off the shelf and activated?
The way I suggest, and we are engaged in this at the MPO level in Harrisburg, we have had several meetings, and the district and I have been involved in a couple of them, talking about what the MPO's plan is for active transportation, where the gaps are in their network. And I think that plan has been brought up before there to kind of emphasize that connection. I think it's particularly important with the additional work going around I-81 and some of the interchanges there. I can bring it up with the MPO and dust it off, but I know the district is aware of it, and I know the MPO is aware of it.
Thank you, Roy. Lots of great questions, comments coming in from our audience. I know myself as an avid bicyclist and obviously now introducing my 3-year-old to bicycling as well. I'm so appreciative of all of the advancements that are being made in this area from bicycle and pedestrian safety. So great information, Roy, great presentation. Again, I'll remind the audience that if you do have questions for Roy, for Tony, for Danielle, we do have about 15 minutes yet, so feel free to enter those into the chat pod. A couple of reminders while we wait to see if there are some additional questions coming in from our audience is that we do have that virtual exhibit hall on our event website, www.penndot.gov/innovationsweek. Definitely encourage you to go and check that out. Again, more than 50 innovations and smart practices that are available out there from federal, state, and local agencies. Again, there's also a contact form out there, so should you have questions about any of the innovations and smart practices that you see out there, feel free to submit that contact form with your questions, and we'll get you connected with the subject matter expert who can answer that question. Also, as a reminder, I mentioned this earlier, but recording of all of our virtual Innovation Week sessions will be available on our event website within the next week or so. So if you missed any of the sessions from earlier this week, and you'd like to listen in, check out that event website for those recordings. Also, for a playback of today's session, again, click on that link, the participant link in the calendar innovation that you received. Once we end the session today, very shortly after that, you'll be able to click on that link and hear a playback. So if you missed any of the earlier presentations or any part of Roy's presentation, you'll be able to listen listen in. So I'm going to go back to Dan quickly. We're about 13 of till the top of the hour here, just to see if any additional questions came in.
We have nothing.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Well, again, we'll keep it open here just for a few minutes yet. But again, I'd really like to thank Tony, Danielle, Roy. Some really great information presented here today. A lot of great things, great innovative things going on in the world of multimodal transportation. And I think as this year has taught us for sure, we're definitely seeing, that need for multimodal transportation options, opportunities for folks grow, especially in light of the pandemic. So, certainly we thank all of them for their presentation today. We thank you to all of our audience members for attending today. I think it's been a great session. We've gotten great questions and great feedback. So just one more time to Dan, just to see if we have any additional questions.
No questions on the chat pod.
Okay, well, with that being said, we wish everybody a happy Friday and a wonderful weekend. It looks like we're in store for some great weather here in Pennsylvania this coming weekend, especially for being a weekend in November. So just wishing everybody a great rest of the day and a great weekend. And thanks again for joining us today.